The Giro d'Italia is back after its second rest day, stage 16, and we're up deep in the Alps, in the Dolomites. Bad weather, chaos, and at the end of the day, it's Tadej Pogacar in the pink jersey, 15 days in the lead, and winning his fifth stage win in this 2024 edition. I want to cover a few different items: the chaos, Julian Alaphilippe, and yes, Tadej Pogacar and his dominance. Let's talk about the chaos because the rest day was beautiful. Sunny weather. I went out for a 15-kilometer run, saw Tadej Pogacar out training on his bike, and many of the other riders enjoying the afternoon sunshine. But then, in the late evening and into this morning, the weather turned nasty. And what we have today, in Livigno, the site of the rest day, up at 1,800 meters, it began to snow this morning during all the chaos that was going on. The organizers, already a week out, decided to cut the big Stelvio climb up to 2,700 meters. Then this morning, the CPA, the Riders Union, wanted to do something more. They wanted to make sure those riders didn't have to climb those first two climbs, one of which would have taken them over the side of the Stelvio. But that was going to be too high, especially with the rain and snow that was starting to come down, let alone up at the top of that pass. There was a lot of back and forth. The organizer, for their part, wanted to see the riders at least roll out of Livigno to get their start town money. The riders at one point, from what I was hearing, they were ready to just strike the whole stage completely. Finally, the organization came to an agreement. The riders would all get in their team cars, go down the road on the other side of the Stelvio pass, where the race would have come initially on the original plan, the 202-kilometer stage plan, and they began the stage there, what was now 121-kilometer stage, shortened stage, but still just as dramatic and aggressive. In fact, maybe even more aggressive with less kilometers to cover. Still very cold day out there, raining all day, still coming down now as I bring you this report. And the report, after the race got going, it was about one rider. Julian Alaphilippe already won the stage the other day, and his comeback victory was out again for a blood, attacking after an earlier attack by Juan Pedro Lopez and American Kevin Vermark from Team DSM. Well, then it was Alaphilippe's turn. He went free with a group. That group would eventually disintegrate, but Alaphilippe would remain. Other riders were attacking, and that included Giulio Pellizzari, Christian Scarroni, and Ewan Costiu, riders you'll be well familiar with all the way 16 days into this Giro d'Italia because they're often on the attack. And wow, Julian Alaphilippe, because we're talking high mountain stage, the riders still had to cover the Passo Pinay up to 1,400 meters and get here to the finish where we're at now up in the Dolomites. Beautiful mountains all around us, but you can't see them through the rain. Up to 1,600 meters, this is the Monte Pana climb up above Santa Cristina. To get here, it was a 6-kilometer climb with the last 2 kilometers averaging, get this, 11%. In contrast, the Passo Pinay, the climb before this, 23 kilometers long, about that, average solid gradient. Julian Alaphilippe could handle that well. Back in the GC group, what was going on? What was Movistar setting the pace, driving it hard? They wanted to do something for Nairo Quintana, former Giro d'Italia winner and climber deluxe, who was showing great legs, just caught in the last meters the other day by Tadej Pogacar when he won his fourth stage in this year's Giro d'Italia before the rest day. So they wanted to try to do something for the Colombian, and they set him up, but unfortunately Nairo popped, wasn't able to even do anything today. Instead, they looked to Pelayo Sanchez, the winner of the gravel stage the other day, and he was riding well, but then his chain came off his ring or some sort of chain problem. Yeah, I spoke with him there at the finish line when it was chaos. All the riders were coming in looking really cold, looking really nasty on the day. Larry Warbass, the American who worked for Ben O'Connor on the day, just trying to gather himself as I'm doing right now out in this cold weather. The riders had a hard day out aggressive on that Passo Pinay. Movistar tried to set things up. It exploded for their Quintana man. It was Sanchez who was giving it a go. His chain exploded, popped, whatever. He was out of the chase. It was over to Costiu. It was over to Giulio Pellizzari and Christian Scarroni. And yes, Julian Alaphilippe still on the hunt, pushing hard. You have to think, I think 30 kilometers out, that was when he was solo. He's picked up by those guys. Then he was gapped off of those guys, was able to get back onto those guys with Scarroni. It was a group of 4 or so. Then eventually 2.5 kilometers to go. After they passed over the top of the Pinay, he was down, up, and at 2.5 kilometers to go, he was caught. The only guy left on the road was Pogaćar, back behind in the GC group while things were starting to get crazy. Movistar essentially set up the day for Tadej Pogacar, and what we reckon is that he wasn't going to go for another stage win in this third and final chapter of the Giro d'Italia. Maybe go for that Monte Grappa stage win on stage 20. That would have been it. But Movistar set things up, and what was he to do? If it wasn't going to be for him, someone else would have gone, and he would have had to respond to one of those GC riders, so he would have won the stage anyway. And that's what happened today, because it was Damjan Novak, the Slovenian rider, setting things up for Rafał Majka. Then Rafał Majka did the Tadej Pogacar launch. I need to look at my notes. I lost my notes somewhere in the chaos out there. But Tadej, I think, launched around 1.5 kilometers to go, started to pick up Julian Alaphilippe, and started to pick up the others. Pogaćar was the last rider to remain. I think Pogacar had him in his sights around 900, 800 meters, and then passed him to go on solo to the stage win. And I'll get to Pogacar here in a minute. We'll focus more on him in a second. Let's turn back to the GC group. What was going on back there? Geraint Thomas setting second overall at the beginning of today's stage. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all the way down to 188th. I don't know how many are in the race at this point. All of those guys are well off the mark. Tadej Pogacar, who's comfortably in the lead of this year's Giro d'Italia, doesn't need to win again, doesn't need to gain more time, but he did. Anyway, back in that group, Geraint Thomas sitting second overall, starts to edge further back in that GC group, and he was looking weak. The rider sensed that. We saw an attack by Rensman, who was giving the clear order to go for his white jersey prospects, Team Ineos Grenadiers. He was riding off the front, not so much an attack, but he was riding at the front when Thomas was going off the back. Then Tiberi was trying to close that gap, and he looked like he may be losing the white jersey today. Things started to reshuffle. The cameras went back to the riders up front. Excellent battle with Pogacar and passing Pogaćar to go on for the stage win. Then back behind, things had come back together. And in the back, we saw the attack of Bora Hansgrohe rider Danny Martinez, who was third overall at the beginning of the day, attacking, sensing, drawing blood from Geraint Thomas, knew he was on the ropes and wanted to really try to gain some time today. And when they got to those steep pitches, as I mentioned, the final 2 kilometers, 11.5% average, it was the time when Thomas was losing ground and losing ground fast. Tiberi, for his part, rebounded, started to put in time back behind Martinez, who was up the road, started to put in time on Rensman to gain even a little bit more time. I think 5 seconds more he gained on his white jersey today. Superbach, Ben O'Connor, the Australian from Perth, was back there losing time with Geraint Thomas, and I'll get to those GC results in a minute. Let's talk about Tadej Pogacar, because he's won so many stages in this year's race. Now he counts 15 days in the race leader's jersey, and is well on his way to winning this year's Giro d'Italia. He, for his part, went over to the Italian Giulio Pellizzari, one of the wild card second division teams he rides for, Bardiani, and gave him his pink jersey, and I think the pink jersey, but definitely the pink glasses, gave him as a gift and said, hey man, sorry about that, thank you for being a gentleman about it, and I just whizzed past him for the stage win, but did gift him a little bit of something. And Poggy is a nice guy, super nice guy. Don't get put off by his dominance and everything, because when we speak with him every day in the mix zone, he gives great answers, and day after day after day, ever since he took the lead in stage 2, he's been very polite with us and a true gentleman in this year's race. He said the organizers made the right decision at the start. All the riders were in agreement with that, but I think all the riders would have liked to have a solution in place before the stage rolled out of town this morning, or on Monday before the Tuesday start of today's stage. The alternative, in case there was snow, and you have to think in high mountain, snow is always going to fall, and so the riders would have wanted to avoid all that time lost this morning and the chaos. It didn't look good on television. Let's take a look at the stage results, because it's Tadej getting 16 seconds over Pellizzari. Martinez picking up third place at 16 seconds as well. He'll get 4 seconds in time bonuses, which doesn't really help him in his battle with Pogacar, but helps him with his battle and Geraint Thomas, and we'll get to that gap, because you look down, Scaroni in fourth, Tiberi, the next place GC rider, at 33 seconds, over a Rensman 5 seconds back at 38, Caruso there, Michael Storer there, Ewan Costu there, and then further down when we're looking at the GC riders, Rubio, and what I want to focus on is Ben O'Connor at 49 seconds and Geraint Thomas at 49 seconds. So they lost chunks of time, relatively speaking, in the GC battle today. And Geraint Thomas, when we spoke with him there at the finish, another polite rider to speak with every day, the Welshman is always giving us time. He said those final 2Ks really put the nail in the coffin for him, those steep pitches, and he wasn't on a good one there. Unfortunately, it's bad for his GC result, but we still have another Dolomite stage tomorrow. We still have the big mountain stage in stage 20, so anything and everything is going to happen in this Giro d'Italia, and things could shake up when we're looking at the GC, because as it stands now, with more mountain days to come and the final flat stage into Rome, is Tadej Pogacar on top, 7:18, 7:40 back for Geraint Thomas today. So he's around about 22 seconds off the Colombian rival, Geraint Thomas, the Welshman. And then the Australian, Ben O'Connor, setting fourth at 8:42. Tiberi, 10 minutes 9 seconds in fifth place. Now ahead of a Rensman by 5 more seconds. When you're looking at the time, that's around about 24 seconds if my math is right, but Rensman's really riding strong, the tall Dutch rider. So Ineos has a couple of cards to play, and Geraint Thomas is going to rely on his age and his wisdom. Remember, he won the Tour de France last year in the Giro d'Italia. He came second behind Primož Roglic, so he's going to use that experience in these coming days to hopefully move up to second place for himself and for the team. But it looks like Tadej Pogacar, well, he is untouchable as we're powering on towards stage 21, Italy's capital, Rome. But today, up here in the Dolomites, it was another Tadej Pogacar day, powering ahead, Pogification, stage 16 of the 2024 Giro d'Italia.